Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to respond to a comment I got on my last video posing a potential argument against the position I took. Now, here's the comment. It says, "The only counter to this within the confines of faith in the seeable system is what those being nature and material natures are. If a bird loses its material wings, it is a being of a bird. It is still a being of a bird. But the being of a bird could be defined as a creature with wings. With that definition, losing the material nature results in a change of the definition of being to a definition like creature without wings. So the argument seems to be for nature that is instated. It cannot be changed materially, but that relies on definitions which could be malleable, at least that I see." All right, so there's a lot going on in this, and the first thing I said in response to this was actually that the most fair thing that they could point out in that comment is the topic I was discussing in the video is a lot more nuanced than I got in the video. But it's a bit of a cop-out answer, so let me dive a little bit deeper into what I think in response to their question. First of all, let me go back over a bit what I was talking about. I was talking about how human beings can be considered to have a formal cause and a material cause, and that a change to that material cause doesn't change the formal cause at all. That is, any defect or change in the nature, in the material nature, as they put it, doesn't change the whole of the being in terms of what it's meant to be or what it ought to be. So, first thing here is they talk about that being nature versus material nature. And so I want to point out what I meant to say, and I didn't rewatch the video from last week, but what I meant to say in that was a formal cause versus a material cause, not a being nature. There is a difference between form and being. Form is like the rational structure that a thing takes, like A plus B. Or the example I used last week was what's known as a hypothetical syllogism. If A, then B, if B, then C, therefore if A, then C. It's a logical structure, an argumentative structure. But A, B, and C don't mean anything. Those would be the matter of the logical argument, whatever A, B, and C stand for. So A plus B, it's that rational logical structure of a thing, and everything that exists, humans included, have a rational structure to them, or to us. Being, on the other hand, is the actual act of existing. I could conceive of a unicorn and its formal structure, but it doesn't actually exist, so it doesn't actually have being. So saying being in this comment isn't quite accurate to what I meant. It would seem actually that a change to the matter of a thing could affect whether it has being or not. An example of this would be if a pet dies. Pets, which don't have rational immortal souls, means that if they die, that logical structure of their being dies with them. They no longer are. They cease to be. So a change in the material nature of their material cause could result in a lack of being in the way of death, unfortunately. So for the next part of it, they talk about definitions. And here's something really important to understand, is that there are, in metaphysics, two different kinds that we can consider. There's humankind's and there's natural kind. Put basically, humankind's care what you think, natural kinds don't. A humankind is something that we can conceive of in that what the thing is depends on how humans conceive of it versus, or how we think about it, what we think that it is. A chair or a seat, and a thing could be a seat if a human is conceiving of it as a seat, if we're using it as a seat, right? The human interacting with a stump of a cut down tree might make it a seat. So whether it's a seat or not has to do with what the human is thinking about it or what the human's doing with it. Natural kinds don't. The stump is going to be made out of wood, or a tree is going to be made out of wood. Whether we think of wood as the composition of cells and chemicals that make up wood, or if we think of wood as an element of nature in and of its own self, right? However we conceive of what the wood is, it's still going to be wood. It's going to be what it is no matter what we think of it. So that would be a natural kind. Something that is simply the way it is because of some other reality than what humans think of it. A total lack of material relation to form does not inform the form. So this is getting into what they were saying about a bird being defined as a thing with wings, or creature with wings, and then not having the wings. So if the creature itself, the bird that we're considering, is defined as being a bird because it has wings, and then it just doesn't have any wings whatsoever, that doesn't change what the formal cause is. The bird is still going to have the same logical, rational structure despite not having the wings. So part of that is to say that if the definition, if the formal cause of the bird is as simple as a creature with wings, and it does not have wings, it might still have that formal cause, and it just materially fails to meet that material cause. This was kind of the hang-up, I think, from the original video last week. What we see in the material does not necessarily tell us something about the form. The example I gave in my video last week was calling humans a four-limbed creature. Even though a person might be an amputee, it would still be proper to call them a four-limbed creature insofar as they have that human nature. They should have four limbs. It's natural for them to have four limbs, even though they don't. So the bird ought to have wings. And we're claiming that by being a bird, or by having wings, it is a bird. What we can actually know from this is that a creature that ought to have wings is a bird. Now, this is a bit why I brought up the whole thing with definitions, because creatures don't tend to have simple definitions like having wings makes it a bird. I don't think anybody would call a dragon a bird, though some might, I suppose. But either way, that strict definition could be seen as simply a humankind used to describe the natural kind of what a bird is. That is, we as humans are saying that a thing that has wings is a bird, but regardless of what we think a bird is, the things that we're calling birds are still going to be the thing that they are. Whether it has wings or not, it's going to be the thing that it is. If it's a penguin and it's born without wings, it's still going to be a penguin, whether we call it a bird still or not. Now, if you were to take a creature and totally remove absolutely all of its material cause, its material reality, that relates to what its form is, there might be an argument in there that you are talking about a different creature. Like if you took out absolutely everything that makes it materially what it is and put in the matter of something totally else, then you might be able to argue that the form is different, but the thing is you've just changed what the thing is. This second part of this here is that not only does the matter-y thing have not informed the form, that is, the matter does not cause the form actually causes the matter. If a thing originally had the appropriate matter that it ought to have, if a bird is born with wings, if the penguin is born with wings, and it loses that appropriate matter, maybe there was a killer whale attack and it was, barely escaped but lost its wings in the meantime, it's still going to be a penguin. It's still going to be a bird, even though it no longer has that appropriate matter. Thing is, it did have the appropriate matter at its conception, at its creation, and it's losing that doesn't change the thing that it is. It's still the same creature. You could say it's numerically the same. It's identifiable as the same penguin. And so it's still a penguin. It still has that being. Now, the last thing they said, or second to last thing, I suppose, is this comment about instated nature. Instated nature is a common thing I've heard people talk about in relation to theology, especially philosophers to theologians, but it's not strictly that. Referring to some creator who, in creating a thing, instates into the thing, they add into the thing as they create it, some reality of what it's meant to be. Now, in relation to humans, this gets fuzzy because we're saying that God, as our creator, put into us what we're meant to be. And a lot of people don't like that. Now, I do personally believe in an instated nature. I do believe that when God created us, he had an intention in what he was doing. Much like a human carpenter building a chair or a bench decides, I'm going to make a bench and it's going to have the intended purpose of being sat upon, and so it's going to be in the shape so to be sat upon, in a way that human carpenter is instating a nature onto the bench, whether it truly turns out well as a bench or not. Now, I do believe that God instates in us a kind of nature like that. And this is what I was arguing at the very end of my video last week, because I was saying that we have a nature, a material nature and a formal nature. Nature is not the right word. Material cause and formal cause, and that God knows what those things are. So if there is a flaw in our matter, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're no longer the thing we are. And even if we can't identify the thing we're meant to be by that flaw in our matter, that we are still known by God to be what we are meant to be. So that would be kind of from that instated matter. Now, I'm going to make an argument for the sake of this video that it doesn't actually need to be an instated nature for the rest of this to follow. And that's because any nature proper to a creature belongs to its creature. So what I said here is any proper nature belongs to its object. Or that is to say, a thing is what it is meant to be. So a thing is what it is by its nature. Right? The nature makes it to be the thing that it is. So if we were to change the nature of the thing, it's just a different thing. We can't, by definition, be talking about the same thing. It'd be like the cliche of comparing apples to oranges. They're not the same thing. So if we were to take an orange and make it an apple, well, it's an apple. It's not an orange. So whether it's an instated nature, whether there's a creator that intended to cause that thing to be the thing that it is and knows what it is, as I argue with God knowing us, the fact that it was created as the thing that it is makes it the thing that it is, and it can't be something else. It's going to be identifiable, at least in number, as the thing that it is. The penguin before that I talked about that loses its wings is still a penguin, and it's still the same penguin. And if it underwent some change entirely, it would no longer be the same penguin. It might not even be a penguin at all. It would be some totally distinct creature. The very last thing that this commenter talked about is definitions and how the whole argument relies on definitions, but definitions can be malleable. And so if we're considering the definition of a thing, of a particular object, and then simply change the definition, well, the object's not going to be the same thing anymore. Or if we change the object to not have the qualities of its initial definition. So their argument being that there seems to be certain ways that this can be changed around. That's only going to be with humankinds, though. So, like I was saying before, with a stump in the woods of a cut down tree, and a person decides to sit on it, it is a seat. It becomes a seat in that it is being used as a seat and understood by the human to be a seat. But that does not make it, properly speaking, a seat if it's not being conceived of as a seat. Right? So in the case that it's a humankind, it is only a seat insofar as it's being conceived as a seat. What will not change, regardless of how we decide to define it, is that it's a stump of a cut down tree. That is going to be true no matter what happens. The natural kinds aren't simply malleable. It's that a thing was created and that it is what it is. And it doesn't just change to being something else. I think a really good example of this that I didn't think of last week might be to consider children. From the point of conception to birth to adolescence to maturity, the body changes quite significantly. At the moment of conception, a human being is a single cell, which is very hard to, I think you'd have a very hard time looking at that single fertilized egg and a fully grown adult human and saying, yep, that's the same person. But we understand numerically that they are the same person, despite vast material changes. And that's because, well, the form hasn't changed. That material change from the beginning to the end doesn't constitute a change in the form. We recognize that a small baby, when grown to be a toddler, is the same, and that toddler, when grown to be a child, is the same, and that child, when grown to be a teenager, and teenager to adult, and so on. Despite there being a material change occurring through that whole time, we can understand that one person to be the same person. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you have your own thoughts that I might make a video on in the future, throw them in the comments box down below. If you liked it, please remember to give the video a like. And if you want to see more of this stuff in your comment or in your feed, hit the subscribe button. That way I will be recommended to you when I upload new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Thank you. God bless.